She was sure you'd run after her. She was certain your silence would crack first, because men like you were always taught that losing her would be the end of you. Listen carefully. There's a moment every woman anticipates but never admits out loud. It's the moment she pulls back just enough to make you lean forward. Not because she hates you, but because she's testing the gravity of your desire. She wants proof that she matters more than your pride. She expects the texts to multiply, the explanations to spill out, the late-night apologies that weren't necessary. This is where most men collapse, not from weakness, but from conditioning. You were taught that effort equals value, that pursuit equals masculinity, that if you don't chase, you lose. And she believed you believed that too. So when she went cold, distant, unpredictable, it wasn't cruelty. It was strategy mixed with fear. Fear that if she didn't create distance, you'd stop trying. Fear that if she showed how much she cared, she'd lose leverage. Fear that love without tension wouldn't survive, and in her past, it probably didn't. So she pulled away, expecting the familiar sound of footsteps behind her. Your footsteps. But something happened that disrupted the entire script. You didn't chase. You didn't demand explanations. You didn't beg for clarity. You didn't flood her phone with reassurance or panic disguised as romance. You did the unthinkable. You stood still, and in that stillness, you reclaimed something most men never realize they gave away, your center. When you didn't react, her nervous system noticed before her mind did. Because silence without desperation feels different. It's not empty, it's heavy. It signals choice. It suggests options. It implies that you are not being pulled by emotion, but guided by self-respect. And that changes the dynamic instantly. The power she thought she was holding evaporated, not because you took it from her, but because you stopped offering it. Here's the truth few men are told. Chasing doesn't create attraction. It creates relief. Relief that she still controls the emotional direction. Relief that she is still the prize. When you didn't chase, she wasn't offended first. She was confused. Confusion unsettles people more than rejection, because rejection has an explanation. Confusion forces introspection. It makes her ask questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Questions like, did I misjudge him? Did he ever need me the way I thought? What if he's actually stronger without me? Your restraint forced her to confront something uncomfortable. That her value to you was not based on fear of loss, but on alignment. That you weren't staying because you were scared to be alone, but because you chose to. And when she tested that choice by stepping away, you didn't collapse. You respected the distance. That single decision rewired the entire emotional hierarchy. Women don't lose attraction when men step back. They lose attraction when men abandon themselves. And when you didn't chase, you didn't abandon yourself. You communicated something powerful without saying a word. You showed that your life does not pause for uncertainty, that your worth does not fluctuate with her moods, that your presence is an invitation, not an obligation. This is the moment she starts watching instead of pulling, the moment curiosity replaces control, because now she's no longer testing you. She's studying you. When you didn't chase, something subtle but irreversible shifted inside her. Attraction isn't logical, it's neurological. Her body was conditioned to expect pursuit as confirmation of importance. When that confirmation didn't arrive, her mind began filling the silence with stories. And the stories weren't flattering to her sense of control. She replayed conversations, she reread messages, she examined moments she once felt certain about, not because she missed you yet, but because certainty had been removed, and uncertainty is uncomfortable for anyone who believes they understand the rules. Here's what most men never see from the outside. When a woman pulls away and a man chases, the emotional tension releases. The test ends. She feels safe again, not because of love, but because the power dynamic has stabilized in her favor. But when you didn't chase, the tension stayed alive. It didn't dissolve. It turned inward. And now she had to sit with it alone. That's when attraction deepens or dies. And deep down, she knew which way it was going. Your absence didn't read as punishment. It read as independence. You weren't trying to teach her a lesson. You weren't playing games. You were simply unavailable to emotional chaos. And that's what made it loud. Silence that comes from manipulation feels hollow. Silence that comes from self-respect feels intentional. She could sense the difference even if she couldn't articulate it, because emotionally healthy restraint triggers something powerful. It activates respect. Respect is the foundation attraction quietly stands on. Without it, desire becomes unstable, anxious, and temporary. When you didn't chase, you didn't just protect your dignity, you demonstrated boundaries without announcing them. You showed that you don't negotiate for affection. You allow it or you walk away from confusion. That's rare, and rarity always increases value. Now here's the uncomfortable part. In that space you created, she started questioning her own behavior. Not immediately. At first, she told herself you were stubborn, distracted, or prideful. But over time, those explanations stopped holding weight because your energy didn't feel reactive. It felt grounded. And grounded men don't disappear to manipulate. They disengage to preserve alignment. That realization unsettles someone who is expecting leverage. This is where attraction transforms into something deeper. Not obsession, not fear, awareness. She begins to notice your absence not as loss, but as contrast. Life feels slightly quieter, less charged, less dramatic, and while drama can feel exciting, calm exposes something else. Emotional honesty. She has to ask herself whether the push-pull she initiated was about desire or about reassurance, whether she wanted connection or validation. You didn't answer those questions for her. You let the silence do it. And silence, when paired with consistency, becomes a mirror. It reflects behavior without judgment. It shows people who they were being. And not everyone likes what they see, but those who grow are changed by it. You also changed during this time. Without chasing, you reconnected with your own rhythm. Your focus returned to your purpose, your body, your routine, your direction. You didn't sit by the phone rehearsing what you'd say if she reached out. You lived, and that's the part no one talks about. The moment you stop chasing, your energy shifts back into yourself, and that shift is felt even from a distance. She sensed that you weren't waiting, and that terrified her more than rejection ever could. Because waiting implies availability. Not waiting implies options, and options force accountability. Suddenly, she wasn't deciding if she wanted you. She was wondering if you still wanted her, and that reversal is where real attraction is born. At some point, the silence stopped feeling neutral to her. It started to feel personal, not because you attacked her, but because you didn't orbit her anymore. And for someone used to being the emotional center, that absence feels like gravity disappearing. This is where her emotions stopped being theoretical and became physical. Tightness in the chest, restlessness, random thoughts of you during unrelated moments, not longing yet, but disruption. You interrupted her internal balance by doing nothing at all. She told herself she didn't care. She told her friends you were probably busy or not that deep. But those words were for performance, not truth. The truth was quieter and more dangerous to her ego. You didn't react the way her past experiences trained her to expect, and when patterns break, the mind scrambles to regain control. She started checking signs, your activity, your energy, your presence in the world, not obsessively, but instinctively. Curiosity had crossed the line into concern. Here's what most men misunderstand. When a woman tests a man by pulling away, she's not trying to lose him. She's trying to locate herself in his priorities. She wants to know if she can step back without falling out of focus. When you didn't chase, she didn't feel abandoned. She felt exposed. Exposed to the possibility that she might not be as irreplaceable as she believed. And that possibility forces a reckoning. This is where attraction turns inward. Instead of asking, "Does he want me?" she begins asking, "Why do I want him?" That's a dangerous shift because it removes you from the equation. She can no longer blame your behavior for her feelings. She has to own them. And ownership creates depth. That's when memory becomes emotional. Moments with you replay not as highlights, but as sensations. How she felt around you, how calm or alive or grounded she was. And those sensations don't respond to logic. You didn't posture. You didn't perform masculinity. You didn't announce strength. You simply acted like a man whose life continues regardless of emotional turbulence. That consistency is rare because it requires internal validation, and internal validation is magnetic. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It's noticed because it doesn't ask. She realized that your attention wasn't something she could summon on demand. It had to be earned through alignment, not manipulation. At this stage, she may have felt the urge to reach out, not with vulnerability, but with something safe. A casual message, a neutral question, a soft probe to test if the door was still open. Not because she wanted to play games, but because she needed to know if the balance could be restored without her having to fully expose herself. But here's the part that defines everything. Even if she didn't reach out, even if she stayed silent longer, the shift had already happened. You became associated with emotional consequence, not punishment, but cause and effect. She learned that distance doesn't guarantee pursuit, that uncertainty doesn't secure attention, that respect matters more than tactics. And that lesson doesn't fade quickly. It stays with her, whether she returns or not, because you didn't just step back from her, you stepped into yourself. And in doing so, you forced her to confront a truth most people avoid. That attraction isn't about control, it's about coherence. Two people moving forward without dragging each other. When she saw that you could move forward alone, not bitter, not reactive, just steady, something clicked. You weren't playing hard to get. You were hard to destabilize. That realization either scares someone away or draws them closer. There's no middle ground. And that's when you stopped being an option and became a standard. When a man becomes a standard instead of an option, everything around him changes. Not loudly, quietly. And that quiet is what unsettles her the most. Because now, even if she wanted to return to the old dynamic, it wouldn't work. You're no longer standing where she left you. You didn't freeze in place. You evolved. And people can sense evolution the way they sense confidence in a room. It doesn't announce itself. It rearranges the atmosphere. This is where her internal conflict deepens. On one side is familiarity, the old script where she controls the emotional tempo. Where she pulls, you follow. Where uncertainty keeps her safe from vulnerability. On the other side is something unfamiliar and far more dangerous. A man who doesn't need to win, doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to chase. A man who can walk forward without resentment. That kind of man forces honesty, and honesty requires courage. She may start rationalizing her absence, telling herself timing was off. Circumstances were complicated, feelings were unclear. These explanations protect her ego from the truth that your non-reaction wasn't indifference, but discernment. You didn't disengage because you didn't care. You disengaged because you noticed misalignment and chose peace over pursuit. And that choice reframes everything. Here's the part that matters most. When you stopped chasing, you didn't become colder. You became clearer. You didn't shut down emotionally. You stopped overextending emotionally. And women can feel the difference between emotional absence and emotional containment. One feels punishing, the other feels mature, and maturity is intimidating to someone who thrives on emotional leverage. At this stage, she may feel drawn to you in a new way, not with excitement, but with respect. Respect doesn't spike adrenaline, it steadies it. It makes someone wonder what it would feel like to meet you without games, without tests, without withdrawal. But that curiosity comes with risk. Because to engage with you now, she would have to show up honestly. And honesty removes the safety net of control. You also stopped making her the emotional referee of your life. Your happiness no longer hinges on her responses. Your mood doesn't rise and fall with her attention. And that independence does something profound. It turns connection into a choice rather than a necessity. And when connection is a choice, it becomes sacred, not guaranteed, not assumed, earned through mutual presence. She may notice that when she thinks of you now, it's different. There's less drama in the memory and more gravity. You feel solid in her mind, like someone who doesn't bend easily, like someone who could leave without hatred and stay without losing himself. And that balance is rare. Most people lean too far in one direction. You didn't. This is also where many men break their own momentum. They mistake her renewed interest for an invitation to revert, to over-explain, to over-invest, to make up for lost time. But restraint isn't about punishment. It's about protection. You don't rush to prove yourself to someone who stepped back from you. You allow them to step forward with intention. And if they don't, you don't chase shadows of potential. Whether she returns or not becomes secondary at this point, because you've already won something more valuable than her validation. You've reclaimed authorship of your emotional life. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of chase. And that inner shift changes how every future connection will meet you. She thought your silence meant weakness. She learned it meant strength. She thought distance would pull you closer. It showed her you could walk alone. And once a woman sees that a man can walk alone without bitterness, without panic, without collapse, she never forgets it, because that's the man she measures others against. By now, she's changed without even realizing it. The woman who expected your desperate chase is no longer the same. Her confidence, her sense of control, the way she could manipulate situations to her liking, all of it has been tested and shaken. She's been forced to pause, reflect, and confront a truth she never wanted to face. You are not like the others. You don't bend, you don't chase. You move through your life with intention, with clarity, with a self-respect that radiates without effort. And that, more than anything else, awakens something primal in her, the desire to earn your attention, your approval, your time. She realizes that her power has limits, and suddenly the tables have turned. The woman who thought she could pull, control, and dominate is now curious, unsettled, and magnetically drawn to the man who refuses to chase. She begins to notice the little things she never paid attention to before. The way you hold yourself in a conversation, your subtle confidence in small decisions, your calm presence that doesn't bend under her tests. She sees your life unfolding, full and unapologetic, and wonders how she fits into it. That tension, that desire to be seen and valued by a man who doesn't chase her, it's intoxicating. And the more she feels it, the more she starts chasing herself, subtly, cautiously, testing the waters to see if she can reach the same level of impact in your world that you have effortlessly in yours. Every glance, every text, every carefully timed action she takes is now calculated. But unlike before, it's no longer in her control entirely. You've achieved something most men never understand. By not chasing, by holding your boundaries, and by valuing your own life first, you've become magnetic. You've created a tension she can't resist. You've shown her that attraction isn't about manipulation, games, or desperation. It's about self-respect, authenticity, and knowing your worth. She can feel it in her gut. She can feel it in the moments she catches herself imagining you, wondering what you're doing, hoping for a word from you. And that longing, that subtle pull toward you, is something no pursuit could have generated. It's organic, it's real, and it's irreversible. Here's the ultimate lesson. When a woman thinks you should chase her and you don't just reject a game, you rewrite the rules of attraction. You force her to see you as a prize, not a target. You make her feel the very thing she always thought she could control: uncertainty, desire, fascination. And in that shift, she begins to respect you, crave your attention, and even admire you silently. She starts internalizing a lesson she can't put into words. Some men are uncatchable because they're fully themselves, not because they play games. So here's what I want you to do. Think about the last time you felt the pull of a woman who assumed you'd chase. How did it feel to step back, to let her fill the gaps herself? That feeling is your power. That feeling is your leverage. And it's not about cruelty, it's about authenticity. You aren't playing her game, you're living your life. You aren't chasing validation, you're creating it within yourself. That's the type of man who is remembered, desired, and ultimately respected. Now here's a personal challenge for you. Imagine a woman who expects your chase, but you remain still, calm, and unshakable. What happens next? Comment your answer below. I want to hear your experiences. And if you found this video valuable, give it a like, share it with a friend who needs to hear this, and subscribe so you never miss the secrets most men will never know.